it. Okay, so let's start with the translations by reciting Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. And then after that, it's taking the refuge. So the yogi would recite, I take refuge in the Buddha 3 times, I take refuge in the Dhamma 3 times, and I take refuge in the Sangha 3 times. And after the taking refuge is the taking the precept. So for the retreat, we will take the 8 precepts. The first precept is to observe the precept from abstaining, taking life. The second precept is abstaining from taking what is not giving. The third precept is abstaining from sexual. The fourth precept is trying to abstain from false speeches. The fifth precept is trying to abstain from intoxicant that causing carelessness and forgetfulness. The sixth precept is trying to abstain from eating at the wrong time, mainly from the afternoon until dawn the next day. The seventh precept is trying to abstain from dancing, singing, music, watching show, wearing garlands, smelling perfume, and ointments. The 8th precept is trying to abstain from lying or stay on high and luxurious beds or seats. So that is the procedures for taking the precepts as well as the refuge. Now I will start with the translations or the summaries of the translation. So today is the first day of the winter retreat. And why do we want to have this retreat? And why do we practice the meditation? So that we can live without fear. We all know that all beings are scared of death. And there's many methods that nowadays with the advanced technology to prevent us from dying. And even though there's many methods that trying to prevent us from dying, we still die. So the Buddha was the only person who could help us not to die. So there's many causes of death. And for example, nowadays, the entire world is facing the COVID-19 pandemic. And because of this virus, we can die. Then the question would be how to not die. So first of all, we have to believe that there was a person who did not die. And that person was the Buddha. And then another question would arise then, how did the Buddha not die? And the answer is, the Buddha, he did not die because he eradicated all the viruses in the mind. And these viruses are greed, hatred, anger, and delusions. So in the sutta or in the doctrine, there's several causes of death. And one of them is the ends of your lifespan or the ends of your karma. And then when a person ends their lifespan on the karma or so-called death, that person will go rebirth. And then this rebirth and the person will go through life in this karma, in this realms or the next realm or the higher realm. And the person after the ends of karma or the ends of the lifespan and that person would die again. So this cycle of death and rebirth just keep on going. So let's say in this mundane world, we will live and we would have fun or we will feel very happy in when we hear something, when we see something, when we taste something, etc. And we keep on enjoying it and we attach to that. And because of these attachment that we are existing, and because of that, we are continue this cycle of death and rebirth. So when there is this this mental factor, these beautiful mental factors that exist in the mind, and these are the mental factors or the things that, because the mind, there's the mind, the consciousness, as well as the mental factors of the mind. So then these beautiful factors of the mind stay in that. So that is a thing that we can consider that cannot die. So nowadays, no matter how advanced technologies is, or no matter advanced medicines is, they can only reduce the pain, or they can only help us reduce the pain that we cannot die. That help is physical health, but in terms of preventing us from not dying, there's only the methods of teachings of the Buddha. So when the Buddha taught us, he talks about the death that caused by, again, 3 viruses or the defilement in our mind, which is greed, anger, hatred, or delusions. And that is the death of the mind or the mental death. And so what does it mean to die in that way, to die mentally? This means not knowing anything. So in today technologies, there's a lot of machines. When you go to the hospital, they can take your temperature. They would know how hot or cold you are. And then they can get you on the scale, and then they would know your weight, how light or heavy a person is. And then they can also get your pressures, your heart beatings, or your pulse, so on and so forth. And these are the machine that created to measure rupa or material qualities. And these machines are very useful, but they can only do 50% of the job. They can only be able to measure the material qualities in our body, but they cannot measure the mind. The mind can only be measured by the mind. It cannot be measured by machine, because nowadays there's no machine that can measure the mind yet. So when I talk about how to measure the mind or how to know the mind, we Sarachi mentions about the beautiful Jaitasika, the beautiful mental factors. And the first mental factors that belong to the beautiful one is saddha, or faith. So the Buddha was the one who found out about faith. Faith about what, or faith in what? The Buddha found out that there's this things called faith in a human being, and the have faith in the truth. And what is the truth? The truth is something that is true no matter what. It is true no matter the time, no matter the person, no matter the consequences or the condition. It's always been the truth. And when the Buddha found out about this truth, not only he found out about it, he's also realized these truths, and then he was be able to taught these truths to other people. So why other people have faith in the Buddha? Why do we have faith in the Buddha? Because when we listening to his talk, listening to his teachings about this truth, and we practice it, and we be able to see and realize this truth ourselves. So therefore, because of that, we listen and we have faith in the Buddha. So what does it mean, the word Buddha? The word Buddhas mean the awakened one, the one that's awake, the one that understands things, the one is not doesn't have delusions in the minds anymore. So before becoming the Buddha, Siddhartha was a regular person just like us. He was the son of the Sakya clan, and he was supposed to become a king, but he left his family, he left his kingdom because he wanted to seek for the truth. And he finally found them and realized them, and he realized the Four Noble Truths. So after becoming the Buddha, he was called Sakya Muni Buddha. This means that the one from the Sakya clan who already enlightened or awakened. So the truth that the Buddha realized and he taught us is nothing but the Four Noble Truths. So the first one is the suffering. The Buddha taught about the suffering. So there is physical suffering as well as mental suffering. In terms of physical suffering, we know that when a person is born, is a lot of suffering, and when the person has this body, there's a lot of suffering. When this body is sick or decaying, there's also a lot of suffering. And especially when this body is about to die, there's also a lot of suffering arising in the body. So that is the bodily suffering. He also taught about the sufferings of the mind. For example, when you love someone and you cannot be with that person, you would be mentally suffer. And when you hate someone and you have to live with that person, you would suffer as well. So there are many different kinds of suffering that are there in this life. And then because of their suffering, there has to be the cause of suffering. What are the causes of this suffering? And the Buddha taught that tanha, or craving, is the cause of all this suffering. So when there's this suffering, there's a cause of suffering, there has to be the end of the suffering. So when you know the cause of it, you will know how to treat it in order to end it. And then when you end, not only you end it there, the Buddha also taught you the way how to reach to Nibbana, the cessation of all the suffering. So the method that the Buddha taught us not only not only help us treat all this sorrow and lamentations that the doctor cannot help us. So nowadays, when a person is sick, the person can go to the hospital. And Sarachi gave the example that when he was sick, he went to Stanford Hospital in Northern California, and it was a very good hospital. However, the doctor there was very good. They could help him reduce his pains physically, but again, these only 50% of the human being, because we are made out of namas and rupa, bodies and minds. So even though the doctor was very good, they can only treat us bodily, but in the mind, it can only be treated by practicing the teachings of the Buddha. So that's why at the beginning of the Dharma talk, we normally taking refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the Sangha. So that is talk about sattva, to have faith in the Buddha, have faith in the teachings of the Buddha. And then after faith, the second beautiful mental factors is sati. Sati is mindfulness. So when we talk about mindfulness, it's very different from the regular memory that we have. Everybody has this memory, or you remember. You most of the time when we talk about remembrance, we talk about remembering the past, we talk about remembering the past events, or we talk about remember or imaginations on some things that have not think about the future. That is not what sati means in this case. Sati in this case mean mindfulness. Does mean that remember to be at the present moment, to direct the mind to be within the body, within the mind at the present moment. And sati in this case is remember to be in the now at the present moment. So when a person live throughout the day, we do many activities, we sit, we drink, we talk, we laugh, we do so many things throughout the day, but we do not remember, or we do not know what is it that we're doing at that present moment. So therefore, and then even that when doing at that time, you can remember the past activities or so on, but still there's not considered as sati. Sati is, it have to be remembered to stay in the now and not forget, because Sarachi considers is forgetfulness is equal death. Because when you forget, you don't know what is going on in your body, you don't know what's going on in the mind, and that way, not knowing is considered as death. So what is it in the now that we have to remember? We have to remember our breathing, because we have to live with our breathing. Without the breath, we will die within 3 minutes. And then we have to remember our posture. There are 4 main postures that we use throughout the day: sitting, standing, walking, and lying. So whatever posture that we use throughout the day, we should remember that we are walking, we are sitting, we are talking, we are lying, and then we are breathing, etc. So, Sarachi recited 2 verses from Pali: Sabba Satta Araha Sattam, meaning that all human or all beings live based on food. We all know that we have to have food. Without food, we would die. Without food, without eating, this body cannot survive. But the other thing that we don't know, that Sabbe Satta Sankara Sattam, meaning that we also have to live with this Sankara. What does it mean, the Sankara? The Sankaras, or the 5 aggregates, mean that the forever changing things. So you live with this forever changing from one moment to another, but you're not aware of it. You don't remember that you're actually living with it. That means that you are actually don't know what's going on, or in another word, you equal death. So when a person remember that, not only we live based on, or we need food to live, we also live with this forever unchanging phenomena, forever changing phenomena. And because of this changing phenomenon, there's life existing. Without this changing, you cannot grow up, you cannot grow old, or you cannot mature, and there's no such thing as life if there's no process of as living or growing. So when the person forget that we are living with this forever changing phenomena, the person is not living. So remembering is living, forgetting is death. So when we talked about this forever changing of phenomenon, then when a person know or experience this forever changing, then the person is actually living at the present moment. The person is actually knowing what is going on in the bodies and the mind. So that way, when the person see that, the person will realize, the person is actually dying and arising or rebirthing at every single moment, not just the end of the life when you pass away, when you die. This does not happen that way in terms of understanding the Dharma. It's understanding the Dharma is that you could see that the person or this human being made of the bodies and mind is actually arising and passes away. All these phenomena, it would die and rebirth at every single moment. And then when you see that and when you understand that, you actually understand death in the way that the Buddha trying to explain. And when you understand death and you see that way, and then when the maturities of Panya wisdom arise, you will be able to experience the undead. And Sayagyi explained that when it's come about the experiencing the undead, it's very hard to explain because speaking or talking is only in theory, and in theory people can actually just in thinking or contemplating or seeing, understanding how the undead is, but this thing is can only be experienced by the yogi through practical experience. So moving on, in order for a person to experience this undeath, we have to practice vipassana meditations. And vipassana meditation is considered of the medicines of the Buddha. So when you go see the doctor, when you sick, the doctor would just prescribe some medications for you to treat your sickness or your disease. And you have to take that medication in order for you to get better. Just like that, the Buddha is the best doctor to treat the mind. When a person has sorrow, lamentations, all these viruses of greed, anger, hatred, and delusions in the mind, we practice vipassana meditation. We follow the Buddha teachings as the greatest medicine so that we can treat our mind. However, no matter how good the doctor is, or no matter how great the Buddha is, if you don't follow his teaching, it just is useless, because the Buddha can give you the best medications or the best medicines for your sickness, but if you don't take the medication, you're not gonna feel better, or you're not gonna get better. So therefore, we have to practice vipassana meditations according to the Buddha teaching. So when the first one, when we talked about is, first of all, we have faith, and then after that we have sati. And in order to practice vipassana meditations, is foundations, sila as the foundation is very important. That's why at the beginning of all the Dharma talk, we always take the sila, at least the 8 precepts. Because without the sila, the mind cannot be calm. And the mind, if they cannot be calm, the mind cannot develop concentration. And if there's no concentration, panya, wisdom, cannot arise. So the teachings of the Buddha, it can be considered as very perfect and very wholesome from the beginning to the middle, all the way to the end. And that teachings is nothing but the Eightfold Noble Path. And this Eightfold Noble Path is guaranteed. If a person walk on this path, the person will progress and go forward the ends of all the suffering. So just in life, we want to work hard, we want to achieve our goal. Just like that, in our spiritual life, when we practice the Eightfold Noble Path, we have to move forward. And this is moving forward. Where we moving forward to? We're moving towards Nibbana, the ends of all suffering, the ultimate liberation. And during the 45 years of teachings, the Buddha taught nothing but these 4 noble truths, as well of karma, the law of karma, the cause and effect. So when we talk about birth, we talk about aging, we talk about sickness, decaying, and death. This is the thing that this is the sufferings of the body, and the cause of it is tanha, craving. Because of all this craving for this life, wanting to live, wanting to continue, have a long life, and so on. So therefore, we are continue to go through the cycle of death and rebirth. So what is the cause of the no aging, no sickness, no birth, no no death? That that would be the Eightfold Noble Path. So if the cause of all this cycle of samsara, of death and rebirth, of sickness and aging and so on is craving Tana, then the cause of the end of it, the cause of no aging, no sickness, no death, no rebirth would be the Eightfold Noble Path. So when we mentions about this body, we always mentions about bodies and mind, two things, bodies and mind. So these bodies or this rupa, material quality, there's our four major elements. And these are fire, water, earth, and the wind element. So when a person know how to practice vipassana meditations, be mindful of the body in the present moment, then the person have to know what is going on in the body at the present moment. If this body feel hot, this body is feel cold. If this body is feel light, this body is feel heavy. If there is vibrations, expansions, or movement in this body, then that means that this body, this person know how to live within the body at the present moment. What about the mind? The mind, the simple functions of the mind is only knowing the object, cognize the object. So when the mind is knowing, there's knowing in the mind, that is the mind knowing and staying at the present moment. So Vipassana meditations is considered is a very good method to treat the mind, to treat all the viruses that in the mind and trying to get rid of it. And when the mind know all these characteristics, all the intrinsic natures of the four elements that made up this body, this rupa material, the material qualities, then the mind is actually living in the body and knowing the mind. And when a person practicing Vipassana meditations, at first, we trying to observe the risings, falling of the abdomen, and we trying to leave the mind at the abdomen area. And then we would observe the risings, falling. So at first, the yogi might observing the abdomen or the bodily movement, but after a while, there would be this penetration when there is a sati, a mindfulness, as well as samadhi, concentration. When these satis and concentration develop, the yogi would no longer see this body. This body would disappear. This only showing the intrinsic nature of the manifestations of the characteristic of the three elements that can be experienced in the body. So example, when the yogi feel hot or cold, that is the characteristics of fire element. When the yogi feel the vibration, expansions, movements, and expanding, that would be the characteristic of the wind element. And just like that, when the person feel heavy or light, heaviness or lightness, and that is the characteristic of the earth element. And when a yogi practicing Vipassana meditation, we want to know what is going on in the body, that those are the characteristic that the yogi should pay attention to. What about the mind? The mind have to know what is going on, what activities of the mind that happen at the present moment. If you are sitting, you know that there's sitting, and there's knowing mind is always remind the mind. Sati is always mindfulness always remind the mind to stay and knowing what is going on in the mind as well as in the body. And when it's come to Vipassana, when we have this sati, mindfulness, or direct the mind to the object, the first mental factors that's right is vitaka, or initial application. So Sarajeev explained vitaka is just like when you hit the bell. And when you hit the bell, then when there's a contact between the bells and I don't know what the stick, then that initial application stay there. And then when the yogi pay attention, direct the mind to the risings, falling in the abdomen, then the yogi stick the mind within that objects of risings, falling. And then when the objects already when the mind already have contact with the risings, falling, then another mental factor, which is vichara or sustained application happen. That's when the yogi observing or following the rising from one rising to another. So the example, again, back to the bell, when the person use a stick to hit the bell, then the bell ring. So with the bell ring, there will be echo or something like that. So that would be when just like that, when the person direct the mind to the abdomen and watching the rising and falling of abdomen. At first, staying on the abdomen is the initial application, and following its rising or falling of the abdomen is the sustained application. And then with that, there has to be an effort, virya, trying to direct the mind, trying to not let the mind wander to anywhere else. So Sayagyi say that this is just a brief reminder how to practice and a little bit of theory, and to remind yogi to, first of all, to have faith. Then after that is to keep sila pure, practicing meditation, to have virya, effort, as well as sati, mindfulness, so that samadhi, concentration, would arise, and then the yogi would be able to experience the undeath. So again, Sayagyi remind the yogi that the Buddha is the best doctor that can help you eradicate all the viruses in your mind. These viruses are anger, hatred, delusions. And these viruses are the one that cause you to go through the cycle of death and rebirth, entire samsara. So Sayagyi encouraged yogi, please practice. And during the 7 day of the practice, the yogis are welcome to submit your question through email to Santi Stupa organizations, as well as asking or have interview with him directly through Zoom. Then I'm sure the organizer would try to arrange that. So if anything, please contact the organizer. So after that, Sayagyi sit with the yogi for 5 minutes, and during the 5 minutes guided meditations, I just remind that put the attention to the risings, falling of the abdomen, and trying to follow the rising and the risings and falling of the abdomen from the beginning to the end, so that you would know what is going on when each rising, as well what's going on in the body of each falling. And at the same time, at that time, if the mind is thinking or if anything's like going on to the mind, the yogi just remember to be mindful and label them. That's all I have for today's translation. Thank you so much for listening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Wishing everybody have a good night. Bye bye.
Thank you, Sayale. Good night.
Good night.